Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Maine Take. My name is Dana Connors. I'm pleased to be the host of this monthly, 2 times a month, I should say, when the legislature is not in session, and then every week when they are. But the Chamber is pleased to be able to bring this program to you as we look at some of the ideas, the initiatives, and yes, the issues at work in our state, all of which are there in play to help improve the lives as well as the livelihood of Maine people. And today's program features 3 such initiatives, each representing investments that are made today that pay dividends in one's life and livelihood today as well as tomorrow, now as well as into the future. And those 3 programs, with the 3 guests I'm about to introduce, one at a time, of course, happens to be Dajuan Eubanks, which will begin our show. Dajuan is the vice president of the Boston Celtics. Yes, that incredible team that's in the NBA finals, and I modestly predict will be the champions, but that's another program, another day. He also is president of the Maine Celtics. He happens to also be in our board of directors here at the State Chamber and leads an important initiative within our membership on diversity, equity, and inclusion. He will be followed by Barrett, Takesian. Barrett is the president and executive director of the Portland Community Squash Program. And finally, we'll have Jennifer Burke. Jennifer is a communication and public affairs manager at the Maine Credit Union League. They are, as you know, they have a very ambitious program they've had in place for 32 years. It's a campaign to end hunger in our state. And this just happens to be the Hunger Awareness Month, the month of June. So with that, we've got a full program ahead, and I am more than pleased to welcome our first guest, Dajuan Eubanks. Dajuan, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hello, Dana. Thank you for having me as well, too. It's a pleasure.
Oh, indeed. You are extremely a leader in our state in so many different ways. I mentioned some of them, but at the moment, I'd like to recognize all that the Maine Celtics, but also their predecessor, the Red Claws, have done to bring basketball into our life with the affiliation with the Celtics. That's been fantastic. You've also placed high level of advocacy, if you will, or appreciation, perhaps is a better word, on our youth. You've come up with a number of programs over the years to really reach into the lives of our young people and help them fulfill a promise that is so important as they grow older and become a part of our economy. And in that respect, the one I really want to focus with you on today is really called the Blue Wave basketball. And I'm going to begin with that question of how did it come about and what was its purpose and philosophy? I know it's had a pretty strong beginning and life, and you were one of 2 or 3 people that wanted to do something. I think it was for your daughter, but it has grown, or daughters, but it's grown beyond that. So tell us about that. How it began, its purpose, its philosophy.
Yeah, so how Blue Wave basketball began back in 2010, 2011, my oldest daughter, she had been interested in beginning to get into basketball. My daughter's in itself. And, with us being a basketball household at the time, we were parents that never really wanted to force our kids to play a sport. We wanted them to gravitate towards it naturally. And at that point in time, when they were in elementary school, going into middle school, they began to show interest. And for me, being in Maine at the time, probably about 5 years or so, I began to understand and see the groundwork and the landscape of the organizations that were around promoting youth basketball at the time. And I just really didn't see something that fit the mold of what I wanted my kids to participate with in that sense. And so 2010, 2011, we began to entertain a little bit. Our team was established. The Red Claws, funny enough, was established. And through that establishment, I began to make inroads with local individuals that were involved in youth basketball, and happened to come across 2 other fathers that were running an organization called Blue Wave under another umbrella, and made the introduction. And through that introduction, they got wind of who I was and what I was involved with. And I had always known that once I established myself in a community, that I was going to plan to do my own thing at some point in time as well. And timing happened to work out perfectly. They had like a group of kids already ready to go, a group of young women, more importantly, that were ready to go. And my daughters were interested, and we came together and we formed Blue Wave Basketball out of that, the entity that it is today in essence. And so there are three of us that co-founded the organization based on the premise of really trying to focus on fundamentals, and fundamentals first, as the tagline, as you'll see if you look up Blue Wave Basketball. And so I've always been a strong believer that, at the age of, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, kids should not be looked at as a specimen and said, oh, because they're advanced skill wise, they're going to be great. At that age, kids are just learning at that sense. And no different than in an educational world, when it comes to sports, you have to teach kids as well. And so I was a big proponent of being able to allow kids to come into a space that if they had an interest in pursuing basketball and learning about the game of basketball, we wanted to give them that opportunity, because kids are still developing at that age. And you never know. They could go on to become stellar athletes across the board. Some may be fortunate enough to go on and play basketball at a much higher level. Others may just be looking to have fun and becoming active in that sense. And so for us, it was important to have a space that was safe, family friendly, and also provided that fundamental aspect of teaching the sport of basketball at an early age and encouraging those who did want to pursue it at a high level, providing them with the know-how and the skill set and the why as to, how do you become better at the game. And, ultimately for me, sports, it's a tool to help develop your characteristics as an individual. And what I learned inside of the four lines extends far beyond the four lines in my real life. And so I was just a big proponent of really being able to put something in place to establish that type of environment around the game of basketball here in the state of Maine.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable because the use of the term fundamentals first is clearly how you can see that apply to any sport, particularly basketball. You really do know how to pass, how to dribble, how to work with other people and so forth. But as you suggested in your comments, it is so applicable to life's learning as well, and how to succeed, whether you're in basketball or any other sport or
Right.
at work or whatever. Those fundamentals become your foundation for moving on. And I was struck by that because I think it's so significant, and you spoke to it very well. Perhaps our viewers don't know, but you were part of the Harlem Globetrotters for a number of years. So your life has been pretty much in the basketball world of things. Is that correct? Or did you?
It has been, but believe it or not, like most of the kids that are participating in our programs today, I never played in a structured youth organization. I was a sandlot kid. So I played sports by the season in the streets and in the fields of Birmingham, Alabama, and so I didn't really start playing organized basketball until I was a sophomore in high school. And so I can identify, but I can't identify in the sense of like how kids are now put into programs and kind of programmed to become these stellar athletes. And, for me, I was a kid that played everything from football during that season to hockey on cast iron skates to baseball in the fields and basketball on a dirt field in the same field there. And even did some Evel Knievel jumping as well during that time on dirt bikes.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, actually, you're a great example and inspiration of the meaning of fundamentals first, because just the way you described that, your life's beginning and how it related to basketball, it's pretty remarkable. Let me ask you this: the program that you picked up on because of your motive to help your daughters get into basketball and has expanded well beyond that first approach. What can you tell us about where it is today and how it has grown into the program that it's intended to be when you first started?
Yeah. A lot has evolved over the last 10, 11 years in particular. And, when you start talking about youth basketball organizations or youth organizations altogether that are promoting sports, oftentimes there's an elite status that's put to it. And oftentimes that elite status is linked to AAU involvement as well. But what I like to share with people, in particular, when we first started the organization, is that we were a youth development organization, youth basketball development organization that participated with AAU, but we did all other types of development as well, too, in the sense of like summer leagues, year-round training, spring as well as fall AAU participation. And we also did personal training in that sense, and so for me, getting involved with the organization back then and like really being able to shepherd it in a manner in which it was truly about development more so than having a kid come on board, be set in the sense of like, all right, most parents want to see their kids advance, in particular in a way in which they may be able to go on to play at another level in that sense. And for me, it was more about setting the realities in place as to, all right, if a kid is truly interested in understanding how to play the game of basketball, one, we're going to give them the opportunity to come in and learn how to do so. And two, as they pick up the skills, the competitive nature and set that most kids will require as they advance in their skill set, we were all for that as well too. And so to be able to establish our organization and, have it, I would say, exceed our expectations when we talk about breaking ourselves away from just becoming an AAU program, but you really year-round youth basketball development is what's been the most exciting thing to see evolve. And to your point of being able to expand, I'm a co-founder and not as involved in the day-to-day, but the fact that Maine Blue Wave is still out there and it's expanding in partnership with another organization is great. And that expansion comes from people being involved with us, families being involved with us, and more importantly, the word of mouth spreading, in that sense. And we've been lucky to be involved with some great families. We've been lucky to be a part of some great kids coming through the program. And we've been lucky to also partner with other organizations that come about as well, too, to really promote the game of basketball throughout the state of Maine.
That's great. Your effort is statewide, and you're showing that by what you've just said in terms of reaching all parts of our state. I think that too is tremendously significant, which really takes me to another point I wanted to ask you about. And I may be wrong in my perception, so please correct me if I am. But it seems to a degree, your program, in addition to teaching our young people values outside of the sport itself, things that are necessary in our life's journey, from discipline to teamwork to skill development and so forth. It seems that to me, and again, it's my personal opinion, that a lot of the fun today that goes with sports seems to be lost. I hear parents say more than once, I want my son or daughter to play basketball and to be the very best they can be at it. But to do that, they can't play other sports because they have to hone that skill that starts so early and develop through time. I find that a sad commentary. I welcome your opinion. Am I out of touch altogether on this issue?
Dana, I don't think you're out of touch at all. And case in point, from my own philosophy, my kids, just because I co-founded and started a basketball youth program doesn't mean that they had to participate in it at all. I wanted to be able to make it accessible for them to have the resources and tools to get better, but I did not force them to come into the whole deal. And I think that in itself is part of the key to really being able to allow kids to explore and really develop themselves physically, because it's, I'm a big believer as well, Dana, that you don't put kid in one sport at an early age and have them just focus on it, and oftentimes what that would happen, and this is what comes with youth sports sometimes as well too, is that you have the super parents that are living their dreams through their kids. And oftentimes when they bring their kids into these programs, they have a expectation of something that their kid does not have an expectation for, and for me, I always been somewhat direct with parents around that. And if a kid wants to be in the gym, they'll let you know. If they want to be involved in any sport or any activity, they will let you know. But for those that are sometimes being forced by their parents, it's very noticeable in that sense. And the unfortunate thing that tends to happen with that is that if you do have a kid that shows promise, but they're being forced to do it, oftentimes they'll reach burnout much sooner than they would if they naturally just was allowed the opportunity to evolve with the game and the sport itself and really embrace the fun aspect of it. And that's what you alluded to in the sense of like fun. And that's one of the things I've always tried to share and implement whatever I was coaching teams, my daughters in particular, was that, all right, you play sport to win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's competitive nature in that sense. And there is a parallel in our society where, I know we want equity and all of that to take place, but in sport, it's designed to compete. And you can learn both from winning and losing, and you also can become stronger from winning and losing. And so I've always been a big proponent of like the reason why we play sport is to go out and compete and bring the best out of each and every one of us. And also at the same time, we have camaraderie, and we have development that takes place. And just because one kid might be at a certain level at a certain age and another kid is at another, doesn't mean over time as they develop, that might not pair out, or there might be a flip in the sense of like how a kid develops in that sense. And so I've just been a big proponent of really trying to help parents understand the fact that if their kid really wants to do it, they're going to do it, and whether you're in a youth elite program or you're just playing in your high school program, if you show the skill set to advance on to the next level, people, organizations will find you. You don't have to be part of an exclusive program in order to gain exposure. If you're really good at what you do and you're putting the numbers up in a high school setting, you're going to get recruited regardless of where you are in the country. And so that's been my take, but I don't think you're far off in a sense of some of the expectations that exist out there.
No, I think what you said is really spot on, because there is that, and we live in the world that kind of reflects everything you said here today. It's not just sports, it's life. I mean, in life, we try to, maybe fun is the bad choice of words, because there are days in our job that is not fun, but you try to make, there is that camaraderie, use that term, It's an apt term. We are in a competitive world. We live it every day, and we learn from our losses as well as from our wins. And I think, truthfully, there's a lot more I'd love to chat with you about, but let me say this. You are an inspiration to all of us for what you do, but also for the way you do it. I mean, I am so fortunate that you are on our board, that you are co-chairing our efforts on this incredibly important initiative that many of us have recognized that we have dropped the ball in trying to do something about it, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I can't thank you enough for being part of our state and for what you bring to our state. Dajuan, there's so much more I could ask you, but I've taken a lot of your time. I know how busy you are, so please know we appreciate you and what you do very, very much.
Thank you, Dana, and I appreciate you as well. And thank you for getting me involved in the state chamber. It's been a joy to work alongside of yourself and Mark and Cliff to really bring to life the efforts around what you've spoken on in the sense of the new direction that the chamber would like to include as part of their pillars in that sense. And I look forward to working with you further. Although I know this is your last year, I know you won't be too far removed from the organization in itself. And so it was a privilege to work with you while I could, being here as part of a member of the state in this sense. So thank you for inviting me out today.
Pleasure is all ours, and I'll forever be a fan of yours. So take care. Be good.
Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm pleased now to actually welcome another person committed to change and to help the youth of our state. That person is Barrett Takesian. And Barrett and I met, oh boy, it's been some time ago now, in a coffee shop in which Tae Chong brought the two of us together. I was struck by both his commitment as well as his program and the vision that he had. And I'm dying to share it with all of you because, like we saw with Dajuan, it is really committed to making a difference in our young people's lives. And our young people are definitely our future. So Barrett, good to see you again. A lot of water over the dam since then, as they say, but you've been up to some great things. The Portland Community Squash deserves really an explanation as to what is its purpose. How did it come about? What's its purpose? What's the philosophy behind it? Share that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a Maine kid. I grew up in Southwest Harbor, Maine, up on Mount Desert Island, and I had the opportunity to get a taste of Boston. My mother remarried down that way, and I've split my life between the island and Boston most of my years. So Portland was a natural settling place for me after I graduated from Bowdoin. And I took a job at Unum, which I think a lot of recent grads, it's a place where we land. And early in my time there, Unum was really advocated that we get out and volunteer in the community. So Portland Community Squash just came through volunteerism. For me, I was involved with the Boys and Girls Club. I was involved with the YMCA, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I got to know the amazing kids in our city. And, I had an economics major from Bowdoin, but youth development and community development quickly became a passion. And I just used one of the skills that I was exposed to was the sport squash in Boston. There's 50 something squash facilities in greater Boston. There was none in Portland, but looking back on it, that was the opportunity. It was a blank slate. We live in a cold state. I knew the sport would be successful, just the chance for people to get together, get some exercise, hit a ball against the wall. And so I used squash as a way to work with students at the local YMCA, and adults were getting involved. And before you knew it, we were building a community. And when you start building community, you become keenly aware of the challenges in that community. And quickly, the organization was created as a nonprofit, and we started adding wraparound services to address the opportunity gaps, the wellness gaps, and the integration gaps in our city. And 10 years now for me doing this work. We have our own facility now, a couple hundred families in our community, and we've sparked a national movement of community squash centers across the United States. And I'm really fortunate to chair the Portland Out of School Time group now as well, trying to bring these wraparound services and commitment to access to all of our arts and sports in greater Portland and across the state of Maine. So what became a volunteer opportunity has become a lifelong passion.
Yeah, that's pretty clear, both at this time when I'm interviewing, but also when we had that time together with Tay, it was very clear that it is a passion, and it's based upon compassion. And I think it's remarkable. Like Dajuan, the sport seems to be kind of the means to the end, if you will, because the sport is what brings people together, but the wraparound services, using your term, deserves a little more discussion as well. What are some of those things that you do that supports that youth, that gives them that promise, that hope when they see what you do and learn what is available to them? It piques their interest or builds that first step forward.
Sure. Well, you're right. All of us in community development, we have a hook. In our particular instance, it's squash. But once a student is in the community, you're going to retain, if you run a great program, you're going to retain that student over a long time horizon. There's a lot of opportunity to do more. So in our program, students typically spend around 20 hours a week after school in our building, and they'll rotate through squash practice. We have academic support, and we have 2 teachers on staff. And then we also have a pretty robust wellness program where students are having critical conversations, getting exercise, and we have a pretty big cooking program that's a fan of the kids as well. So wellness, academics, squash, but then also all of the intangibles as well. Students are able to sign up for our mentor program and be assigned a mentor over multiple years. We travel to college campuses, community service trips, and squash tournaments on the weekend. And through all of this, students are learning pathways to opportunities, whether that's, summer opportunities or internships or career exploration. They're forming relationships with peers and adults. We're not just a multicultural center, we're multi-generational. So all of the families have access to our facility as well. And they're also learning skills for lifelong health and wellness as well. And squash happens to be a lifelong sport, which is particularly powerful because we have, people playing from 3rd grade all the way until their 80s in our facility. So quickly, you start with the sport, but it starts to feel more like a church as you really get going with the work.
Yeah, I was struck also by some of the reading preparing for the program today that Jen had provided me, is that there's a real effort that, I can't remember exactly how it is expressed, but it says you speak of the walls that we must overcome, that we won't stop until we fill the gaps. and talk about you kind of approached them, but talk about, I think there were three listed that really reflected a little bit what you just said, but could you talk about what those three are? Because it is about breaking down barriers as well as encouraging and helping young people. You help them a lot when you break down those barriers. So what are they?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we started the work, the state and the country was pretty infatuated with college graduation rates, and Maine had a long way to go. The average, when we got going with the work, about 30% of our students that qualified for free lunch were graduating with a post-secondary credential. So we knew, adding academic support, and when you have a team, to say to that team that we're committed to each other, not just athletically, but in the classroom as well. So adding that academics piece was easy. But when we opened our facility in 2017, parents were saying, yeah, academic support's great, but we really want a place where our kids are off their phones, they're forming healthy relationships, they have access to healthy food. And so wellness and just the health of our children and our families is probably the most important things to the parents. As much as we want to say that every kid should go to college, just that health and happiness of our kids rose to the top. And, the United States in general has a long way to go in preventative health. So the wellness gap is something we talk about. And then as we did the work, we saw the kids come together so beautifully across lines of difference. And we started doing research, how much time does it take to form a new relationship? And what we read from the University of Kansas is it's 20 hours to form trust with someone, 60 hours to build a friendship, 200 hours for a lifelong friendship. And for those that have played college sports or maybe been involved with theater or some type of passion, hitting that 200-hour mark is something we're familiar with, and you form these lifelong relationships. So we saw the kids come together across lines of difference, and now we've been asking ourselves, why can't we do that with the adult community as well? There aren't enough spaces in our community where people are able to spend enough time together. When I ask people, where's the most integrated space in the city that you spend your time? Oftentimes we hear the grocery store, and I respect that answer, but you're not gonna run into someone for the amount of time necessary to form that relationship. And so we've taken it upon ourselves, since we have the kids as common ground, since we have our space and our building, we really think we can become one of the most integrated spaces in the city as well. So we're actually building a cafe and a food component onto our program, because a lot of our adult community has said that food is what brings us together. And we've been having interesting conversations with other leaders in the food space as well. So, you can see how what starts with just a little sport quickly becomes more than that. But when we look across Portland, that's what makes Portland so special, and Maine for that matter. In Portland in particular, though, the arts and sports, we're really spoiled. We have 67 organizations in our out of school time work group, everything from sailing to rock climbing to community theater to poetry. And how can we leverage these small community organizations to be the next wave of community centers for our city? And in other parts of our state where we might not have the density to be building, additional infrastructure, how can we leverage our schools to become community schools that are bringing people, the full family in to get to know each other? But, some of the statistics in terms of community involvement are pretty startling. Religious attendance has been way down the last 30 years. Membership organizations like the Rotary Club and others have been down a little bit. And the first onslaught was the telephone. When we started calling each other, we stopped going into town centers. And then the television was a real, allocated our time back into our own homes. And then I think this movement that we've seen with social media is much more alarming than the other two, because, the digitalization of our communities. And I do worry with what's happened with COVID, Dana, that we're going to say it's too dangerous to go out into public. And, we have an excuse now to just be at home and but I want to remind people that staying at home has a cost too, and that we really need to know our neighbors and have strong social capital and social connections if we're going to overcome the ever-changing societal challenges that come our way. So, in some respect, I've been a little bit worried, but in others, when I look around at all these tools we have to build community, I'm really hopeful. And so what I'm most passionate about right now is, how does this work scale? Most of these community centers that are represented have been heavily dependent on philanthropy. So, our philanthropic dollars are limited. So how can we be as efficient as possible? And our organization runs with 7 full-time staff members. We deliver almost as much financial aid as your traditional YMCA, which is closer to 100 employees. So, efficiency has been really important to us. And then how to align with state institutions. We have a child care subsidy program here in Maine that supports kids to go to, daycare, et cetera. But if you read the statute, it covers students to age 13 if they meet certain income criteria. And if there's a diagnosis of any kind, they're covered till 18. So when I look around, I'm saying, there's only 11 licensed providers of school-age children in the state, but I see 60 right here in our own backyard. So it's, how do we align these little gymnastic studios and martial arts studios that have been operating independently as little mom and pop small businesses, and how can we get them aligned with a state strategy so we have more community spaces? So I think it's a much bigger movement than just squash.
Well, you've proven that to be the case, but the value of squash is what, as well as your vision and the effort behind that vision, has brought us to where we are today. So my hat's off to you. I think you've done a tremendous job. Let me ask you this, and again, I could have you on forever, I think. Well, forever may be a stretch, but longer than we have. Let me ask this. If you were to ask, what would your ask be of us? I mean, you are doing what I often refer to, for people like yourself, you're doing God's work to try to help our youth. And now you're looking to older population with a sense of bringing us together, helping us have a fuller life, a happier life. What would your ask of us be to help you?
Well, I think as individuals, I think our most precious resource is our time. And I think the folks in Silicon Valley are pretty rich right now because time is money, and we're giving them our time. And what I would say is, let's give our time to each other and think about how we spend that time. Just get involved, be involved in any type of community you can think of, whether it's music or, a bowling league or whatnot. There's a study in Boston that, Boston's somewhat notorious for their social segregation, and populations don't move beyond racial lines in the city sometimes. And so the city did a study about what change in our time or in terms of where we spend our time, how much change to start to combat that social segregation. Yeah. And the folks at MIT did the study, and their early findings said changing where you spend your time by just 2% could cut the social segregation in Boston in half. So what are those nodes? Where are people intersecting and forming those relationships and getting to know each other? So I just challenge people to think about where those spaces are in your town, whether you're in Southwest Harbor, Maine, my hometown. I had to reflect back on the spaces that I had the opportunity to be, and Harbor House was a community center up there that I spent a lot of time as a kid. And then, looking across Portland as well, it does seem like if we're not on social media, we're probably at a brewery. And it does worry me that sometimes, the breweries aren't necessarily the community centers where you're going to see a representative slice of Portland. So, what are those spaces, and let's spend time in them.
Here's my last question for you before I let you go reluctantly. Sure. If somebody wanted to get involved with your effort, learn more about your effort, either to donate their time or to provide funding in support of what you do, how would they reach out? What would be the best way to do that?
Well, the best way would be to come visit us. But of course, if you'd like to have a preliminary conversation, pcsquash.com is our website. And yeah, the great thing about our organization, everyone, there's a place for everyone there. So I look forward to hearing from you. And we've got great corporate partners that have helped us get to where we are. And we have another chapter to write. We're expanding our facility as well. We're building, as I said, that cafe, some social spaces, a couple more courts as well. So come on by, see our dreams, and see if we can become one of the best community centers in the country. That's what we're working on.
I would predict that with your ambition as well as your vision, that is very likely. And I am privileged to have met you and to stay in touch with you. And if there's anything that we can do to assist, we are there for you. So thank you so much, Barrett, and good luck.
Thank you,
You're on
Dana.
the right track. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're an incredible connector too, my friend. It's great being with you.
Next, I am very pleased to welcome to today's program, Jennifer Burke. Jennifer, I can call you Jen from now on, right?
Please do. I feel like I'm in trouble when someone calls me Jennifer.
Like your father saying, Jennifer,
Jennifer.
you're in trouble today. Anyway, Jennifer, we're very pleased is with us. She has the energy that you're going to love to be able to get for yourself. And I'm anxious to have her share it with you. She is a communications and public affairs manager at the Maine Credit Union League. Jen, it's a pleasure having you and your enthusiasm with us today to wrap up our program for this week. Let me begin by acknowledging that this is Hunger Awareness Month. And you, Maine Credit Union League, have put out a challenge to businesses with the effort of raising $100,000 in 30 days to end hunger, or to help end hunger. That's quite a challenge, but this is the third year you've done that, right?
This is the third year we have done this campaign. We initiated it 3 years ago at the height of the pandemic because our hunger relief partners across Maine, needed extra assistance to respond to the growing demand for food assistance. So we set out with this challenge several years ago. It was enormously successful. Last year, still lingering pandemic, we thought, let's do it again. We hit our goal once again. So I think this could be an annual thing because, National Hunger Awareness Month is not only a great time to raise awareness about hunger, but also dollars to help combat and get food into the hands of those who need it most.
But I must say that I am so impressed to learn that it's not a 1 month and done. You started this, or your company started this. I don't think you're much older than 32 years. 32 years ago, when the Credit League members came together, and for the last 32 years, if my memory serves me correctly, you have raised like $11 million.
Yeah, over $11.3 million since the inception back in 1990. And Dana, you're exactly right. Credit unions wanted to come together behind one signature social responsibility effort. And credit unions are local. We've been seeing hunger in our communities for a long time, and we wanted to do something to address this issue. So we started the campaign for ending hunger. It's an initiative that all Maine credit unions get behind and support. It's dollars raised, which we're exceptionally proud of, but it's also awareness. Dollars are just one component of how we collaboratively end hunger. Raising awareness is just as important. There are people that are having difficulties putting meals on the table in every Maine community, and hunger is a solvable problem. So our credit unions are doing our part to try to combat hunger here in Maine.
Oh, you certainly are. And what I was struck by was, I probably shouldn't admit this in my position, but I have to, because I was totally unaware. Food insecurity is a vague term and doesn't always express the sense of urgency, but hunger has a deeper impact in the use of the word. And I think I'm correct, and correct me if I'm not. There was like 182,000 people that suffer from hunger in the state of Maine, representing 13.5% of our population. That is amazing.
Yeah, we have the highest rate of food insecurity in New England, and that is not a record, any Mainer should be proud of. We want to make sure those numbers go down. Our league, Maine's credit unions, are working collaboratively to help end hunger as part of the End Hunger by 2030 initiative. And, it's important hunger impacts people of all ages in all corners of our state. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't take a vacation. It's only probably been exacerbated since the pandemic. And let's face it, Mainers are struggling with the inflation costs, rising gas prices, rising groceries. If you haven't turned to a food pantry before, you may have to now. We're all feeling the squeeze of the inflation. And so that's why I think we all felt empowered to make sure we keep this challenge going, to make sure we hit our fundraising goals.
So you collect these dollars. How is it distributed? Through partners, through?
That's exactly right. We've got tremendous partners in the Good Shepherd Food Bank, Full Plates, Full Potential, but credit unions go back into their communities and they're giving it to the local food pantry, to meal sites, Meals on Wheels, and schools. Schools move mountains to feed our children. And it's a very sad reality that sometimes the meals that these kids have at school might be the only meal they have per day. So credit unions raise the funds and they put them right back into the communities, where it's best needed.
Yeah, the issue that probably brought this home to me as much as any was in the past couple of sessions of the legislature, like you said, probably made worse by the pandemic, were the number of children in schools that it was their only meal they got and so the effort was to continue it throughout the summer and to make sure that it was available all the time. That is a commentary that strikes at the heart of any of us, all of us. It's
absolutely
remarkable.
You don't have to be a parent for that to hit home. I am a mom, and it pains me to think anyone's going to go home and be hungry, but it makes me very worried for those children who are going to be getting out of school this week, next week, and may struggle to have meals throughout the summer when they're not in school every day. So programs like ours help aid hunger relief organizations, the folks that are moving mountains to bring the food to those people. And again, children, it pulls at the heartstrings, but, I worry about Maine's older adults. We've got oldest state in the nation, and, cost of prescription drugs. It's a balancing act. So, it really runs the gamut. And as I said, the data, hunger doesn't discriminate. So, we need to do our part to feed hungry neighbors in need, no matter how old they are or where they live. That's what we're trying to do through our campaign and of course through this $100,000 challenge.
You are doing more than your part. That's a remarkable commitment you all are making. I commend you for it. I also believe I read correctly when I said that you even stepped up to provide for the Good Shepherd Food Bank initiative a building to help collect and distribute.
We did. Up in Hamden, we have the Maine Credit Union's Food Distribution Center. So we're quite proud of that. Good Shepherd Food Bank is a tremendous partner of ours. In fact, 25% of the funds that we raise this month for the challenge are specifically going to be directed to our friends at Good Shepherd Food Bank. I was at the food pantry in Auburn in April, and I've got to tell you that the team there is just amazing. And it's so daunting. If you haven't been, you walk in and you see these big pallets of food, and it's alarming to think that this is what we need, and then some, to make sure people have what they need to stay, keep their bellies full.
Yeah, I've got to say this, if people aren't wondering after they've seen this interview with you, boy, I've got to give some money. That's a strong program. Are there any restrictions? Like, do you have to be a member of the credit union? Are there any if I wanted to give you money, How would I do that?
No, thank you. Thank you for asking that. You do not have to belong to a credit union to contribute to the campaign for ending hunger. I'd love you to be a credit union member, but you certainly don't have to be, because again, the money stays in Maine and goes back to our communities and our food pantry partners to help people in all corners of the state. So if you're a credit union member, great. If you're not, that's okay too. We have a website, campaignforendinghunger.org. We've made it very simple for you to go online, make a donation, and you can certainly visit a credit union branch and provide a contribution there. But we know everybody's online these days, if not in front of their laptops, they're on their phone, and you can go online and $5 can help make up to 15 healthy meals for someone in need. So just kind of think about it. That's like the price of a cup of coffee these days. It's $5. So maybe you skip that cup of joe just one morning and you put it toward the campaign for ending hunger, and you can feel good about helping somebody.
Jen, you make me feel good just listening to your passion, your enthusiasm, your compassion. Yeah, it's all in one. And that's
this is not a job for me. This is part of my responsibility as a Mainer, as a mom, to make this state better. They get better for my daughter and the generations that come after her. We all have a role to play, and I'm privileged to help participate in this effort on behalf of our credit union network. It's truly the best part about my job. And honestly, I can't wait until they don't need me doing this anymore, So if folks want to put me out of work, that's okay. I am okay with that, because I want to see hunger eliminated in the state. It's a solvable problem. And I think if we continue to keep our eye on the focus that it's a solvable problem, we can do something. Maine has such a great spirit. We help out each other. And so let's help each other out and stamp out hunger.
I would not begin for a New York second to add to that, because you said it so well. The only thing I can say is that we are privileged to have you not only on the show today to remind us of this campaign in June for $100,000 in 30 days, but to also recognize all that Maine's Credit Union League have done, are doing for this incredible barrier, for lack of a better word, that stands in the way of progress and in the way of people's happiness. Jen, I can't think of a better spokesperson or
Thank you.
enthusiast than you. You do it with extreme energy and pleasure, and it's our privilege to have you on the show.
Well, I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity. And again, it's campaignforendinghunger.org. And, take our challenge and then challenge somebody else to make a donation.
Well said. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Dana.
Good luck. I begin the takeaway this week with these words. They are heartfelt words. They are said with appreciation for the effort, the commitment, and the compassion that you heard in those representing the initiatives that were part of our program. I say that because of what lies behind each of the three initiatives that you heard about today, and for the impact that each of the three have on our most valuable asset, our people, and particularly our young people, because that is the very place that sets the stage for a successful life experience. All three of them had an emphasis on access, equity, and integration. That there'd be no barriers that would stand in the way for them to be able to access any of the three, particularly the first two. And equity, that was something that was going to recognize the differences, that was going to work with each of them to provide the same opportunities. And integration is something that there are differences, but the programs was going to bring us together. Yeah, the first two actually, Barrett and Dajuan, used sports. One was squash, the other was basketball, as the means to the end. An end where you learn the value of skill, dedication, discipline, confidence, and yes, teamwork. Where you're taught that each of us have worth but together we're stronger. And Jen, I am simply amazed at the effort that they have put behind for the past 32 years to end hunger. I was surprised to learn that 13.5% of our population suffers from food insecurity, hunger. That represents 182,000 people. That's astonishing, particularly when you think that as a major barrier, hunger is one of those things that I'm not sure we all appreciate the extent that it is a barrier, particularly when we live in a land of plenty. But hunger is that problem, and it is hard to understand. But the credit union is doing something about it. Over $11 million has been raised already. This year, they challenge us this month to raise for the third year in a row, $100,000 to put towards hunger. Yeah, each of those programs are pretty remarkable in and of themselves. And individually, collectively, they open doors to opportunity that where hope and promise is present. And they close doors to barriers that stand in the way of one's success. You know, my mother would be proud to hear me say this, but it reminds me of lyrics from a hymn of promise that I heard so many times in church over the course of time, and it's one of my favorites. But here's just a few of those lyrics from one of the verses. It says, "From the past will come our future, what holds a mystery, unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see." Yeah, the future is extremely difficult to predict. Who'd have thought in 2019 that within months we'd be suffering with a pandemic that has left us all confused, but we're working our way through. Well, we do know that as difficult it is to predict, that when what we have shared with you today, that those investments that are made, every moment that we give to one of those three programs, or all three of them, every dollar that we provide to help them meet their goal, gives us not only promise for each individual that's reached by one of these programs, or a barrier is knocked down because of food insecurity, it makes our future more predictable. And isn't that what we want for all of our people, particularly our young people? They are, after all, our future. With that, that is the main take and today's takeaway from our three very, very effective programs that you just were witness to. And I close as we always do. Take care of yourself. Also, take care of one another. Until I see you next time on a Tuesday just like today, take care of yourself. Be good. Bye-bye.